just rocks everywhere.
Oh yeah, technical. Don't like the exposure.
Oh, at the views. Welcome to Stout Conversations, where every week we sit down with creative thinkers in the craft beer industry and beyond. Your hosts, Ken and April, live and work in a 24-foot RV, traveling the country in search of great stories around a great beer. Dude, Sedona is really pretty, like this drive down here. I didn't think that there was this, I forgot actually how many mountains are in the area in Arizona. I was always just constantly
I didn't really know how many mountains
There's a lot.
I mean, I knew there were mountains in Arizona, but like probably most people that haven't spent much time in Arizona, I thought it was all going to be desert and dry and hot everywhere, but it's not actually. Like
the red rocks and there's a lot of OHV trails, but a lot of main dirt roads that are really cool to bring your bike on. But it's just really pretty out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool because it's just like a lot of it's the boondock, the BLM land.
In actual Sedona, there's a whole array of trails that are really easy to access from town. Yeah. Very, very different though, like you were saying from Frida, though. Like so many like rocks and a lot of technical, at least the trail that we took. I don't remember the name of it, but it was still a lot of fun and it's beautiful scenery. The town's interesting. I think it's too many shops. We're not shoppers. But it's still a really pretty town. Like there's so much history there and like a lot of movies were filmed there in like the 30s and 40s, a lot of westerns and just the different mountain shapes, peppers, landscapes. It's beautiful and like coffee shops because we still have to work. But there's a lot of cool restaurants and a lot of art, like artsy javelinas on the road. I don't know, that sounds really weird. But that's what it was.
Yeah, javelinas everywhere in Sedona.
Yeah.
Well,
and it was
statues
cool
and pictures.
When we were there, it was Halloween too, so there's like Halloween trick-or-treaters, and like when we went to Sedona Beer Company, like they were dressed in costumes.
Yeah,
that was cool too.
I got a beer from watching that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
While the Sedona area was stunning, our Sedona-ness wasn't quite met until we met Collie and Mac, owners of the first brewery, Sedona Beer Company, to open in Sedona in over 20 years. With commitment to sustainability and the local community, Collie and Mac are innovators, yes, but more importantly, they offer the only beer vortex in the world. Visiting on Halloween, we found ourselves surrounded by the spirituality of the season, along with true Sedona-ness.
Collie, I own Sedona Beer Company. We opened August of 2018. We have a focus on locally focused beer and sustainability practices.
I think you've done this before though too. You just take control of the conversation. I love it.
No, that's good. Then I don't have to come up with how do I introduce you?
Yeah.
No, but so like what does that mean for people that don't know from inside the industry? What local, like you're very hyper local focused on like everything about the business. It seems like from decorating your brewery to making your beers. What does that look like for you?
So I'm born and raised in Sedona. There's not very many
so you
of
know
us.
Everybody.
I do know, or everybody knows me, which is the weirder part of that.
Well, that's important when you own a business.
Right. My husband and I moved back to do this. We thought Sedona could really use a cool place for people to hang out that was different than normal, different than the tourist area, that brought a whole new vibe to town. And we happened to live in Colorado for a decade, so we accidentally built this brewery that feels very, very much like a Colorado brewery. Yeah. As we've been told, at least. That was an accident. So we, from day one, wanted to make sustainability a priority for us because it's valuable. We work in a water business, and we live in the Southwest, and water is a real issue. The reality of our 10 to 15 year water outlook in this area is going to change. So if we can put in best practices now to help support our flowing rivers and our other water sources, then it only is to our benefit in the future.
So that was a very personal thing for you and a smart business move at the same time.
Right, yeah. I mean, growing up in the Southwest, you're very aware of water, right? Like your use and reuse of water is like very, very apparent. Yeah, and northern Arizona doesn't feel like the same kind of desert that you expect Arizona to look like. We actually have a lot of naturally flowing springs and snowmelt from Flagstaff.
Right.
So this part of Arizona, we have a little bit more of a buffer for water than maybe the rest of the state, but I don't take that for granted, right? It's going to be a reality for all of us. The groundwater is getting less accessible and all of these things, and that's just where we live. So anything that is grown, produced, or made locally, we will try to incorporate into our supply chain. And, you know, we've had people come to us and say, well, what if I do this? What if I do that? And we say, if you can do it, we'll buy it, right? We buy all of our base malt for all of our beers come from Sedona Malt, which is out of Camp Verde, Arizona. It's about 20 miles south of here. It's grown at Hauser and Hauser Family Farms, the barley.
So when you first started thinking of opening a brewery, especially here, was that in the plans to make sure that it would somehow create the sustainable practices?
The sustainability practices were always a priority. However, Sedona Malt came to be at around the same time we did.
Okay.
So we didn't have it to lean on of like, we'll definitely do this when we open, but as we were coming through, they were ramping up. And so we were able to come together early on, and we couldn't buy all of our, they were so new that they didn't have enough grain for us when we first opened to do all of our base malt, but now they're at the point where they do. And so all of our base malt comes from them. Mac drives his Subaru to Camp Verde,
Nice.
fills up the back of it. He takes the growlers from the guys who work there, come back, offload, fills growlers, and goes back for a second run.
Perfect.
What a great partnership.
So does that come at a little higher cost than if you sourced your base malt out of
Yes,
state?
a lot higher of a cost. Quite a bit. Almost triple.
Wow.
Really?
But it's worth it. There's not, sustainability is not a cheap practice to integrate. Those squirrels are also much more expensive than a handful of barrels would be. But it matters, and if we can integrate it into our process in a way that is functional, then it's worth it. That grain, there are so few places in this world you can go and drink beer that is made with local grain, real terroir beer, that there's no doubt in our mind that regardless of sustainability, we are making terroir beer when that is almost impossible in most of the world. You get big hubs of barley growers in the Midwest or in Germany, and those places they can get local barley, but you leave those specific areas, you're not getting local barley anymore.
People talk a lot about that in wine, and they do a lot of that local
Absolutely.
in wine, and it's really nice to hear it now coming about in breweries.
It really is becoming a thing in beer, because you look at something like, say, a Maris Otter, which is a very English-specific thing that you can get things similar to it.
Totally.
But it's hard to get Maris Otter anywhere else in the world.
Right.
And now you're getting malts here that...
And we hope that one day Sonawa is like Pilsen, right? That people are looking for this specific malt for these specific characters. And so if you guys want to taste this beer, that is what that grain tastes like. The only thing in that beer is Sonawa malt and like very minimal hopping. If you wanted to put, it's a single malt pale lager.
Clean, pale lager.
So we don't call it a Pilsner because there's no Pilsen in it.
Okay.
Right?
That's right.
Right?
Got to get the right grain there.
So it is, we joke that that's our beer flavored beer. Right now industry standard is kind of beer that doesn't taste like beer. It's the current craze. And so that is what that barley tastes like.
Yeah, it's got kind of a Pilsner-like lager flavor,
and it is a lager.
But there's almost a...
It's very like
almost
it's a very
subtle apricot to it or something. Like a different flavor that maybe that's the terroir thing coming through, because in a beer this clean, I would imagine you pick up everything from the terroir to the
totally
whatever hops you used.
Yeah, and the beer is meant to showcase Sonawa malt. Like that is the goal of that beer, is to show that it's our accessible beer for our non-craft beer drinkers, right? Like I can give that to a Coors Light drinker and usually they're cool with it, which is nice to have as a brewery,
right?
Especially in a tourist town.
Right.
And so I have that on that beer, but also like for the people who care about malt, the local malt, for my home brewers, for others in the industry, it's like, no, this is what that malt makes. And where it's in all of our beers.
Right, you build off of this to make your other beers.
Absolutely. So the next one in the row is our beer that came out of a Squarrel. It is our barrel-aged horchata beer. So we run a fresh version in the spring and summer. It is 51% rice, It is made with cinnamon
Very
and
good smell.
bourbon vanilla. And then we aged that in a mock whiskey barrel on cinnamon sticks. So it dried it out. It tastes nothing like the fresh version. And you can taste the oak. You can taste the cinnamon sticks. It is the weirdest beer you will ever taste.
I like that.
Well, I've had horchata before, so
Yeah.
but it's still going to be weird.
The barrel aged
Right.
is definitely throws a
Yeah.
different twist to it.
Without going too deep in the woods, can you give us like a brief explanation of squirrels?
Yeah. So that specifically was
Squirrels. Squirrels. Squirrels, not squirrels.
I had to say squirrels. I just had to get it in there.
that was dark charred American oak is what that was aged on.
Okay.
But we have a whole spectrum of woods that we have here, from no toast oak all the way through charred, and then we have a couple of other types of hardwoods. And then from Squarrel we can get basically any wood that's commercially available milled into staves. So, in the future when we want to do different woods, we just have to order staves from the company or have them milled.
Yes, very simply put, then it's just a different type of a version of a barrel.
Exactly.
That's, again, going
a
along with
square
those.
metal barrel, but
Yeah.
you put wood staves into it,
Right, so
to
it-
get the characteristics you want.
Exactly, and basically the whole Squirrel is basically lined with wood once it's put together. And the way they texture the wood makes it so the uptake is quicker. So the barrel we built for the horchata beer with the wood we built is like a very similar barrel to what a distiller would build to put their bourbon in. So people will pick up bourbony notes from that, but it's not because our staves were stoked. It's not because there was any bourbon in there. It's because the barrel we built would be very similar to what bourbon would be made in.
Right.
Right. So like in a bourbon, you pick up a lot of flavors from that oak.
Right.
And same thing with your beer, you're picking up those similar flavors like the bourbon would pick up.
Exactly. The last one I poured for you guys is like a really crazy beer we just tapped a week or so ago.
Horchata beer, isn't that crazy?
Not here anymore.
Not yet.
Not anymore. It was when it came out last year. Not anymore. This is our Fiesta Grande. It is a 11.4% lager. It is a fest beer. We put it out with our Oktoberfest. They went in parallel, and so it literally is just for fun. Nah, we've never seen a lager that high of alcohol.
Right.
Not saying they don't exist. But when you so one thing our brewer does very well is he masks alcohol very well. We have big beers here in general, but you'll never know that the beer, it's not the type of beer that sits hot.
No, it's very good. It's almost a sweet.
Yep, it's a
kind
little
of
bit
taste
sweet.
to it. But you
Yeah,
definitely
you
don't
don't
taste.
smell-
You don't smell that
You
alcohol.
don't have
don't
that alcohol
Taste
burn
it,
on the
no.
nose or anything.
We had a 13% Weizen on up until a few weeks ago that also,
Brilliant.
yeah. Mac doesn't like to follow really any,
That's dangerous.
yeah.
That would be a danger.
Rules.
It's
Now I
super
see why it's your
drinkable.
party beer. Because
Yeah.
like, before you realize what's happening, you're having a party.
Yeah.
Whether you want to or not, you're having a party with that.
Totally.
Were you gonna say like Mac doesn't really like to follow
Sorry.
rules?
Yeah, he
so
doesn't
much,
like to.
or- No, you're fine.
No. So like, he'll
Like-
take stylistic guidelines and say, how do I make this fit for our area? How do I make this fit for our grain? How do we make it different than everybody else's? So you come in, and if you have expectations, if you want our beer to look and taste like everybody else's beer, you're gonna be really disappointed.
Just kind of switch gears a little
Totally.
bit.
Yeah,
So you
for
said
sure.
Mac was an engineer before brewing.
He's an engineer by
And
education.
you still currently are a social worker?
I am a social worker. Yeah.
So how did this even come into your brains to create a brewery?
Yeah, so we were living in Denver.
Mhm.
I was a social worker. My husband was an engineer in Denver.
You weren't busy, so.
I mean, something like that.
That's Barbie of things to figure
We
out.
we both have master's degrees. We had great jobs. We had a dog, like the house, the things,
Living the
and
dream.
living the dream.
Yeah.
And we sat there and we're like, all right, this, what we're doing for the next 40 years. Like, great jobs, great house. Don't get me wrong, very grateful. In 2015, my mom passed away, and we had the opportunity to move back. I wanted to be closer to my dad.
Mhm.
I'm an only child, and here is where I'd move back to. And you just don't move back to Sedona for no reason,
So
because
that's here.
Dad is here. Because Sedona is a retirement community. And when you're in your 20s, I was 25 at the time. When you're in your 20s, you don't come back to Sedona for God without a good reason. Because it is a hard place to be as a young person. There's just not a lot of community. And so our plan was, okay, if we move back, why? If we're going to move back, there has to be more than just to be closer to my dad. Because that's a great decision, but also not a good decision. Because the work for both of us here is very different than the work for both of us in Denver. And so the decision was, well, we've done all the things we were supposed to do. We went to school. We got great educations. We got great jobs. Let's go do something we want to do. And so we moved here with the intention of opening this as our reason for moving. We moved here in October of 2015, and we opened in August of 18. So it took us a while, but they don't call it Sedona for nothing.
Any great thing
was
takes
that
time.
navigating the licensing, or was that just
No, licensing was easy.
Licensing was
Licensing
that?
was easy.
Getting your business ducks in a row?
The city was challenging. The landlords were challenging. There was a bunch of things that were hiccups. It's just a small town.
Right.
You know, because we get so much tourism, it may not feel super small, but ultimately only about 10,000 people live here at any given time, and a lot of them are snowbirds.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty small place. So even just like getting a contractor in the door and working can be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Getting through permitting when the word brewery isn't in any code books of the
Yeah.
cities. Like a brewery hadn't opened in this town since the early 90s.
Really?
So before the city was incorporated was the first brewery opened. And so we were the first brewery that the city had to deal with basically ever, because the other one had been grandfathered in long ago.
So you just opened the floodgates. You
I hope so. I think Sedona
I think
Sedona could use another 4.
Because I think there's maybe 2?
There's 2. So
Two
two.
now, you and
So
another,
so
and
Oak
then
Creek opened
Oak
24 years to the month before us,
Oh wow.
and then we opened. So we're number 2.
24 years in between. Let's hope it doesn't take that long.
Yeah. Well, now that I've done it, I get it.
Yeah.
You know.
Can you tell us more too about the tap handles? 'Cause
Sure.
those are gorgeous,
Oh, yeah.
and that's another story with partnering with
Local.
Yeah, because it's not just you do a lot of local ingredients.
Right.
Your local malts is a big thing, but
Totally.
a lot of local ingredients that go into different crazy varieties of beer. And
Totally.
everything, but-
So we have partnerships with local artists. You'll see local art all around our space that's for sale. Sedona's an art community, but if you're not famous, you're not hanging here. So I opened my walls to anyone who wanted to hang and said hang.
Oh, cool.
So all my walls are covered in local art. And then we have there's very few places in the world that have glass blowing studios in the US. We have a glass blowing studio, a full-blown glass blowing studio. It's across from Whole Foods in West Sedona. It's called the Melting Point. They do classes and shops, and they have a beautiful gallery if you guys want to check it out on your way out. We started our relationship with them with these lights under construction. So they made these lights for us, which was, an easy make for them, and they were great, and we really enjoyed it. And then the next thing we did was build a membership program that started in January of this year, and I had them make our membership glasses. So I have a 20-ounce and a 12-ounce membership glass that they hand make for me. Can you guys make me tap handles? And they just shrugged at me maybe.
They're like, what's a tap?
Yeah, they definitely know what a tap handle is, but they've never made one before. And I was like, all right, I'm going to bring you a faucet, because if it's too heavy, it'll fall open, and I want you guys to know if it's too heavy.
That's a good idea.
I'm going to bring you a faucet, and I want you to try to make me a tap handle. And they're like, all right. So I brought them a faucet. They made me a prototype. We hated the prototype. Because it was really phallic. It was like the most, it was supposed to be like Red Rocky kind of thing, but really it was just so phallic.
So the color was
The
there?
color was there. It had like veins in it.
Oh no!
And I was like, they brought it, and I was like, I can't pour from this. I feel dirty.
There's somewhere else you can sell those probably.
Right,
but,
exactly. And I was like,
we're not
all right.
putting them on our tap.
I told them, all right, so you guys can make them. Let's try. And the thing I think they both love and hate about me over there is I kind of whatever you guys want to do. I don't give them a ton of direction. One, because I'm like, you do you. You're the artist. I'm not an artist. You guys do whatever you want. And also because I don't want to make the decision. And so there's a balance of that, which I'm sure they both love and hate. And so I just took the faucet back. I was like, no. And so they did it again, and I get a picture from the glass blower of a crystal, just a clear crystal like this, and said, I know it's a lot, but what about this? And I was like, so we don't lean into our Sedona-ness very much, because I'm from here and I don't really buy in the same, when you're from here, you don't really play the same Sedona game as everybody else. But this was brilliant. And so I said, yes, do that. So they made me a prototype. It was amazing. And then I said, okay, I need 12. And they said, what colors? And I was like, do whatever you want. Again,
Cool.
Do whatever you want.
And you got that.
And so they made those for us, and yeah.
Nice.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So I got to ask another thing though. There's a thing here.
We're talking about Vortexes.
Yeah. Are you guys a Vortex?
We call ourselves a beer vortex.
Oh, I love it.
I
Okay,
like
now
it.
I like it even more.
That's even better than I've seen the back and forth. It's vortexes or
Vortici.
I don't care, but
Can I tell you my
A beer
favorite
vortex?
thing to do when I was a
Yeah.
teenager was
Heck
to
yeah.
like have tourists ask me questions and then spin them these crazy stories about vortexes and like send them down random trails like,
Oh,
well, if you get down here, you'll know. Like, oh my god, because what else do you do as a teenager in Sedona? Like, there's nothing fun to do.
Trails.
You just literally spin towards these crazy stories and are like, just keep going, you'll find it. Like,
you'll know it when you get
and now
there.
I'm like, oh my god, did I send people to get lost in the wilderness? Like, I feel a little bad about that, but
Random couple.
Oh no, you guys search and rescue some jobs to do.
so.
It's true. You're keeping
that's
search
so
and
funny.
rescue in
So,
business.
you know, the Vortex thing, Sedona's a special place. There's no doubt about it.
Beautiful.
It is unbelievable here. There is some science about longitudinal and latitudinal lines crossing. There's some magnetic field things that are measurable. As for like all of the wooiness that exists, if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, then cool.
If you have that space, and that space is what gets you what you need.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we're also the New Age capital of the country. So we have a good chunk of,
I didn't even know that coming into Sedona. That
yeah. So
I'm gonna get my new age on today.
Yeah, there's
Starting
the
at the
Center for
beer
the New
Vortex.
Age is just down 179 from here.
Hang on. We have one more question.
Sure.
Yeah, so we're living a Stout Life, which to us is like living a life with intention and purpose.
Totally.
And we always like to ask everybody what like your Stout Life would be, without giving you too much guidance on that one.
Yeah. I think growing this baby to something that really adds to my community, like truly my community, in a way that is significant and powerful and I'm proud of. And that's always the goal. Is I'm a social worker, right? So like I've always been like, all right, I'm going to build this profitable entity, and then what is it going to do to affect the larger community? Because if I can build this, then I can build something bigger. And so, you know, living a life with really intentional purpose to do good by my community, to do good by my environment, and the people who work for me, and the people who come in here would definitely be my Stout Life.
I think you got a pretty good start on that.
And I'm always in awe of like the community that's with this industry with craft beer.
Totally.
That's one reason why we like it so much too.
Yeah.
It's that community that's with it.
I think
Everywhere we
social
go.
fits right in.
Yeah.
Totally. It
Totally.
totally
And
does.
engineering
I know.
and social
It
work.
worked out pretty well for us
No,
both.
it's social work, man.
You guys both like the
It's
Fiesta
social.
Grande.
They're
Who
very
doesn't
good.
like Fiesta?
Well, we have to do a cheers. I don't know if you want to do a cheers.
Oh man, can I have my coffee?
Yes, you can.
Oh,
Yeah, you can
perfect.
cheers
Because
with
I'm not.
coffee.
I just. This
I
is
know
where
we're
I
doing
am.
this fairly early in the
Yeah,
morning.
this is-
so.
I want to say
But
like
I'll go with the single.
I am very also impressed with like you seem to have a lot of wisdom, and I love that. And
Thanks.
just like listening to some of your answers, like that wisdom is really nice. So I just want to say cheers to like community and wisdom.
Thanks.
That and doing something different. The sustainability. It takes a bold effort to put yourself out there and do more than you have to. You're
Yeah.
doing a lot more than you have to. Spending more on malts, employing local artisans and stuff
Yep.
to help build your business. I mean that.
We also compost all of our food and beer scraps with a local composting company.
And I know you guys are very involved with so many different organizations
Yep.
on water conservation and sustainability and everything.
Anything
all
we can
kinds
do.
of fronts, and I think that all comes back around in the end.
Thank
So
you.
That's
Well,
all.
yeah, like you and Matt, just above and beyond,
Thank
and
you.
loving every second of it.
We're gonna make sustainability profitable one way or another.
I love it. Cheers! Thank you so much.
Happy
for your-
Halloween,
Happy
y'all.
Halloween.
We have new conversations every week. Be sure to subscribe to Living a Stout Life so you don't miss out. Holly, like many of us, had some fun in her teenage years. What's something you did when you were a teenager that makes you wonder how you ever managed to grow up? Let us know in the comments below or by following the link in the description.
Squarrel. That's full right now. And what's behind you? This is we've named this little bright tank right behind you Sputnik. He is how we carbonate all of our sours and barrel aged beers. So he's a 1 barrel bright
Sputnik.
Sputnik. He's adorable.
Nice.
So we run a 5 barrel American beer equipment brewery. We shoved as big of equipment as we could fit in here, as recommended by every brewery we've ever talked to. So mash, kettle, We have 4 or 5 barrel fermenters. You can come on back here and look back down the. And then we have a 5 barrel bright tank, which is our tax tank right here. So right now they're all full of beer. We're in high season.
Okay.
He's brewing a lot. All of our beer gets produced here and sold in our tap room. You can't really get it anywhere else. We're gonna start pushing some higher end bottles that maybe you can find around the area, but in general, you gotta come to us for our beer. We rotate our tap list almost weekly, and not a lot of things return. So different beers all the time.